Hey friends, in a world where there's already so much art, artists, and even AI now, how can we stand out from the crowd and be like the 1% of artists we look up to and want to be like? That was the question I had when I started my art journey, and after drawing for more than 12,000 hours and reading a bunch of books on the topic and making it into the industry myself, I discovered that there's just 3 steps that, if we do, will get us ahead of the 99%. And in this video, I'll explain exactly what they are and how you can get started today. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Ori, and on this channel, we're all about exploring how we can level up both our art and ourselves. So when it comes to getting ahead as an artist, I think what society often tells us is that we need to have discovered passion for art when we were young, go to an art school, learn under great teachers and mentors, get employed at some big company, and then after a couple of years of working, land on a big project and make a name for ourselves. But the problem with that is that it leaves the 99% of us out who either started art late, can't go to art school, but still feel strongly drawn to art for some reason. That was the situation I found myself in 6 years ago when I started, and so for a long time I was wondering whether people like me was just screwed, or if there was another path to success other than the traditional one. Thankfully, it turns out that we're not alone. In 2016, 2 researchers at Harvard University wanted to figure out how people the world deemed as average could turn 180 degrees and become exceptional even though they didn't follow the usual path and nobody saw them coming. In other words, they wanted to figure out how people like us could become dark horses and rise to the 1%. At first, the researchers thought that these dark horses were extremely rare among those who were successful, and they'd have to interview a ton of people in order to find them. But what they found was both unexpected and game-changing, because almost everyone they interviewed followed what seemed to be an unusual path to get to where they were, and they too thought they were the odd ones out. This turned out to be the case even as they interviewed more subjects, and so the research itself came to be known as the Dark Horse Project. Now, this feels weird because usually you would think that wandering around would just get us nowhere. So what did these dark horses do differently, and what did they have in common? At first, the researchers thought that these dark horses were all rebellious and highly ambitious, but that wasn't the case at all. Here's what they found. They never look around and say, "Oh, I'm going to fall behind. These people started earlier and they have more than me at a younger age." They focused on, here's who I am at the moment, here are my motivations, here's what I found I'd like to do, here's what I'd like to learn, and here are the opportunities. Which of these is the best match right now? And maybe a year from now I'll switch because I'll find something better. So it turns out that what they had in common was that they all focused on finding and doing the things that suited who they were. I think this is even more important for creative people like us, since we tend to have so many interests and so many things that we want to try out, whether it's related to art or not. And one way for us to check out those interests and learn along the way is to take a class on them, like the ones on Skillshare, who are kindly sponsoring this part of the video. For example, I'm an artist who had always been interested in YouTube, and thanks to all of you watching, I'm now able to do it as part of my main thing. But I wish I could have checked out some of their classes when I first started, since it probably would have made things so much easier than having to try and figure out everything for myself from scratch. They're also the largest online learning community for creatives, with classes by experts across all sorts of fields, so you can start learning just about anything you might be interested in there. For example, they have these classes on the drawing fundamentals, which is useful for any artist, whether you're learning it for the first time or just wanting to brush up on them, and even on things like 3D and productivity. So if that sounds interesting, you can check out Skillshare through the link in the description, and if you happen to be one of the first 500 people, you'll also get a 1-month free trial completely for free. So I'm sure we all remember a time when we were at school, being forced to take a class on something we're not interested in, and time just slows down to a halt and we can't wait until it's over. Compared to the times when we're coming up with exciting ideas for our own characters, or maybe drawing a fan art from our favorite anime or VTuber, and it just feels so fun and effortless. It turns out that this is something called match quality. The things that suit and resonate with us have high match quality, and the things that don't have low match quality. This brings us to our first step for getting ahead, which is to follow the dark horse approach and find our match quality in art. Because art is a big field and has many elements to it. For example, with medium, are you into traditional or digital art? With the format, do you want to focus on illustration, manga, or something else? And of course, what style resonates with you? But there's one catch: we can't figure out our match quality with something by just thinking about it. For example, for years I thought I wanted to become a manga artist and draw manga for the rest of my life. But it was only when I tried making one that I realized it wasn't really for me. That led me to try other things that I was also kind of interested in, like 4-panel manga, and I eventually found illustration, which turned out to be a great fit. So I found that the best way to figure out our match quality with something is to do sampling projects, where we make something to get a taste or sample of whether it's for us or not. Here's how to start doing them today. 1. Write down what it is you want to sample. For example, let's say you want to try out illustration. 2. Write down what you want to make. And in our case, let's say you want to make 3 illustrations in a style that you've been interested in. Next, write down the first step you need to take in order to do it. So in our example, maybe it's drawing a sketch. And then write down what day and what time you're going to do this first step. And this is really important because research has shown that when we actually have a clear plan of when we're going to do it, we're more likely to actually do it and not procrastinate on it and all that. Once we've sampled a couple of things and figured out what we have great match quality with, the next step to getting ahead and standing out is to enter the training arc. A common trap I see beginners get into is that they get impatient and focus a bit too much on trying to do things fast. But that's not how you stand out from the 99%. Instead, I found that the answer lies in focusing on making the best art you can, even if it means slowing down and taking longer to do things. There's 2 reasons for this. The first is that you learn and grow the most when you focus on pushing yourself to the limits of your ability and try to go a bit further than that. Over time, your learning will compound and you'll continue to make better and better art. The second is that the internet today is already saturated with content, and putting out more average content just gets you lost in the noise. So instead, what makes us stand out now isn't the quantity of what we make, but the quality. To borrow the words of the comedian Steve Martin, we have to be able to make something so good people can't ignore it. That naturally brings us to the question, how do we get so good that people can't ignore us? Well, actually, I found that the way to improve our art is pretty simple. We just need to draw something, reflect on what we could have done better and what's holding us back, and overcome those issues by learning from a resource like a book, course, or tutorial. And we just need to keep going through this cycle over and over again. But it turns out that the hard part is this over and over again bit. And you might be wondering, well, how long or how many times do we have to do it for? I think the best answer to this comes from the book Mastery. In it, the author Robert Greene explains how all masters go through what he calls the apprenticeship phase. In the stories of the greatest masters, past and present, we can inevitably detect a phase in their lives in which all of their future powers were in development. This part of their lives, a largely self-directed apprenticeship that lasts some 5 to 10 years, receives little attention because it does not contain stories of great achievement or discovery. Often in their apprenticeship phase, these types are not yet much different from anyone else. Under the surface, however, their minds are transforming in ways we cannot see, but contain all of the seeds of their future success. Quick note here, the masters he talks about in the book are not the top 1%, but more like the top 0.00001%, like Mozart and Da Vinci. You know, the people so good they appeared in the Fate franchise. And if all you wanted to do was reach the 1% in terms of skill level, I think you could actually get there in about 3 to 5 years of focused effort, because 99% of people aren't going to do that. But the point is, everyone that gets good goes through a training arc of some form in order to develop their skills, and the best never stop trying to find ways to level up every single day. What sets the training arc apart from all the other parts of the journey though, is that during it, our number 1 priority is to focus on learning and improving as much as possible. As Greene puts it, you must value learning above everything else. This will lead you to all of the right choices. You will opt for the situation that will give you the most opportunities to learn, and in the end, by valuing learning above all else, you will set the stage for your creative expansion. So getting good takes time, but the good news is we can speed up the process by using the right methods. And if that sounds interesting, I'm actually making a course on the fastest way to learn anime style art. In it, I'll be sharing the very best of everything I've learned in the 12,000 hours or so I've spent drawing, including the practice methods I use to reach a professional level in drawing anime style art. So if you want to be the first to know when it's ready, you can go to orderdays.com/course. The third step to getting ahead is to create our own blue ocean. And this is something we actually can do during the training arc. The idea is that a red ocean is a crowded space where everyone is competing for the same audience. There's already a lot of sharks there, and the waters turn red and bloody as they're all fighting for space. Everyone's also kind of doing the same thing, so it's hard to stand out. A blue ocean, on the other hand, is an uncrowded space where there's very few people there, or you have it all to yourself. And because the water is blue and clear, it's easy to stand out. As an artist, we can use what I call the Triple S method to create our own blue ocean. The first S is the subject of what we draw. Something general like drawing cute girls or fan art is a very red ocean with tons of people already doing it. So instead, we want to be more specific based on what we're authentically interested in. For example, you could go from I draw cute girls to I draw cute wolf girls with white hair. Or I draw fan art to I draw fan art of this character only. The second S is style. Style is something I think actually develops naturally as you go through the art journey, but you can make conscious decisions about it, such as having bold, flat colors in the background, or having a concept arty kind of feel. The third S is skill stack. As we go through the art journey, we usually pick up a whole bunch of skills aside from the main one we're learning, whether that's through sampling projects or through the training arc. And figuring out creative ways to combine them with our main art skill is another way to create a blue ocean. For example, a few years ago, I decided to learn some 3D and concept art skills because I was interested in it, and now I can use them in my illustrations if I feel will suit the piece. I think the entrepreneur Naval Ravikant puts it best. Escape competition through authenticity. We're all unique and only we have our specific blend of interests, life experiences, and point of view. We can combine that uniqueness with the skills we learn to make the things only we can. And when we focus on that, we'll be in a blue ocean and automatically stand out from the crowd. Now, one way to make something unique and authentic to us is to come up with our own original characters. But designing them can be challenging, so you might want to check out my 6 best tips for character design, as well as how I made this character I'm using as a VTuber right now in this video. This was Ari, thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!